Brony, and every creature. Welcome to DAG. As always, this is Dratta Arcana at Dratta Talks, and joining me tonight is special guest.
Calpain.
Welcome, Cal, and you have been part of Equestria Daily for quite some time. 2014?
Oh gosh, 2000 and let me think, 2011, December 23rd,
Wow. That's
somewhere around there.
that's around the start of the fandom, and that's quite some time. So I know EQD has been kind of the source for all of us bronies to get our news, get our information about the goings ons in the fandom. And, well, you guys have done a fantastic job of it, but kind of walk us through, like, how that kind of all got started.
Oh, that would be a little bit before my time because EQD had started earlier that year in about January or February. I think it was January of 2011. Um, from what I can recall of the story, is that Sethisto, the guy who did create it all, the very original admin, original pony blogger, he used to post on 4chan's slash co-board, the comics board over there. That's where Pony basically got its start, was over there on 4chan. And, well, the content as the show was going along, the fan content started to greatly increase. And since those threads over there on 4chan, if you've ever been on 4chan, threads eventually they sage out. They eventually get deleted once they hit the bottom of the bottom page to make room for new content. So what Seth decided to do was to create a website on Blogger to, you know, categorize and save a lot of that stuff that was in those 4chan threads. So that was the original purpose of Equestria Daily, was to save all this content that was being posted in those threads back then. And that was really helpful because Seth back then worked at I think Blockbuster. It still existed back then, and or he at least at some rental video store. So he was gone like 8 hours a day, so he couldn't constantly check the ever evolving threads. Yeah, so that was the beginning incarnation of Equestria Daily, and his first right hand man he had on the site was Serial Velocity, who was also in the Chan threads back then, and that's how EQD really started. They started getting emails from people from around the early fandom then that allowed him to post stuff up, and it just kind of grew from there.
Yeah, and I've heard about the dark side of 4chan many times, and the wars
Oh
that
yeah.
went on. Um, so in this world that we live in today, a lot of people like their news fast, quick, daily, and really, we're in this media world where news needs to be like every 5 minutes almost. How would you compare Equestria Daily's timetables to, say, NBC or BBS or some of those other news networks, or even the New York Times?
Much slower paced, but pretty fast paced for a television show, I'd say. Mainly because, well, those publications are dealing with, well, worldwide events that break every moment. Some important person sends out a tweet and they have to have a 15-minute segment on it. Or something random happens around the world that they had to suddenly cover. EQD has always had a schedule where we schedule things for an hour, and since these things are fan content, and one big difference between us and like the news outlets is that the stuff that we usually post isn't just news. It's not stuff coming from Hasbro, but it's fan community stuff, fan community news. So it's more important to keep that stuff up longer instead of just constantly drowning it out with stuff every 5 minutes, because you want to make sure people get the credit that they deserve for the plushies they made, the comics they made, the art they made, or also draw attention to these events that are happening here and there. So we stick to a rather hourly schedule. One other big difference is that since we're based in the U.S., we don't really have 24-hour news cycle like all of these other big publications have. Mainly because, well, none of us are up,
Yeah.
and also there isn't, since most of our content seems to be emailed in from our U.S. audience, U.S. and Canadian audience. We actually don't end up with a lot of emails overnight. Not a lot of content is produced overnight, and there's nothing to post. So the website has always gone into kind of like a sleep mode at about after 9 p.m. blog time. So we're pretty different, but we do know that posting critical news late is a big faux pas. So just like our mainstream publication brethren, we do try to grab on to news as it is reported and hopefully get it up as soon as possible. Sometimes we succeed and get it up like almost as soon as it pops up, within like 10 or 15 minutes. And sometimes it might take an hour or so depending on if we're around the inbox or whatnot. But that would probably be our biggest connection with like the bigger publications, but we're kind of our own thing. It's different running a fan site compared to something that is always constantly reporting what's called news out there.
Right. Yeah, and the fandom really did kind of need this, and news is always going to be something that people want to know. Like you guys have been posting a lot about G5 and that kind of stuff as well, and
Mhm.
especially that movie coming out in 2021. I'm sure we're all psyched about that.
Oh yeah, people are really interested about that one. I think there's some cautious optimism about it. More caution about this one than the other one. Mainly because I think it hasn't been nailed down in stone of whether or not that one's going to be CGI'd, because there was some talk about that, and how well this movie will tie into G5, if at all. So, and plus, it is a long wait. It is a long wait. I think the longest hiatus we had was what was it? Between season 3 or 4, or between 4 or 5? I know it was kind of rather early. It was like a whole year we had no ponies, and that was really tough on the community. Now we have to wait almost 2 years for the next really, really big pony thing.
Yeah, and while we wait for the next, big pony thing, let's talk a little bit about investigative reporting. So, what do you guys do as when you have to do investigative, or do you do it at all?
Uh, that usually fall. Oh, sorry if I interrupted you. It usually falls into the category when we get rumors. Most of the stuff that we do report, as I said, it's a lot of fan created content. So there's nothing really to fact check there or get additional information, because yeah, a picture of a plushy Luna is a picture of a plushy Luna, and unless that Luna was that picture was stolen from somebody else and something like that, but that's a rare occurrence. You trust all the stuff that comes with it. Our biggest investigative reporting, though, seems to come from rumors. Like when a season, like you probably have seen them the past. I think that, gosh, the past few seasons, we seem to always get a new. Here's the episode list for the entire season, guys, and that spreads all around because we think somebody has leaked them, and there's people that don't believe them, people that don't believe them, people do believe them, and so that's when we do some investigative reporting. But it's not too difficult to do that because we have some connections with show staff, and they dislike these kind of rumor mongering and things like that because some people take those lists true to heart and they look too much into the titles and think like, oh, this is gonna be an awful episode, and then they go off on the show staff like, what are you doing, wasting your time on this kind of stuff, and it's all fake. So when those pop up, we send an email or even a Twitter message off to like Big Jim or other people that are working on the project, and they can confirm within the same day whether no, this list is bad, this one's correct, that kind of stuff. So investigative journalism tends to be about rumor mongering and things like that. And I guess our biggest investigative reporting would be about new things, finding things out. Would be we have some people that get dispatched to like Toy Fair in New York City. Um, Also, some of like the licensing events where Hasbro shows up. So that kind of investigative reporting has helped us reveal like new toys and new information on how the show's MLP is doing. So we do some traditional reporting by actually going to events, and we also do some debunking or confirmation with rumors, things like that. One thing we try to keep out of is just drama in general. I know you can investigate like who's right and wrong in drama, but there's always he said, she said, and we try to keep out of that.
Yeah, and every fandom's gonna have their drama, and most of us, are kind of tired of all the in the real world celebrity, did this or celebrity did that, and yeah, it's good to stay away from that stuff. And I really appreciate that you guys try to stay away from the drama because I've always believed that any news network should be factual in their information, should be true, and I've always believed that news needs to be researched and methodical sometimes. And I do like that you also have a section for those of the artists and the plushie makers, the YouTubers, the podcasters.
Mhm.
And you've been doing the nightly discussions and nightly roundups and the morning discussions for quite some time. What's the point behind the morning discussions and nightly discussions? Because I've yet to figure that one out.
Oh, stems way back to when nightly roundup used to be nightly because we used to actually get enough content for those every single night. And now now it's more like weekly roundup. I wonder if I should just change the name. Um, I guess it is tradition. Anyway, back in the day, a lot of people would use the nightly roundups for just what you see going on in the nightly discussions and morning discussions nowadays. And it also happened to be a problem that we had off topic quite a bit in the rest of our posts throughout the day. That made it a little bit of a job on us because I don't think we had a moderating team at that time. We were just about ready to get one. So we had all these off-topic posts, and it was, not related to the content at all, and was kind of disrespectful to the people that wanted their stuff on EQD, and and you guys aren't even talking about it. It was just kind of rude. So I came up with this idea, kind of kind of like what I thought would be an agreement with the commenters on our site. If they wanted a place of their own, I would designate 7 o'clock on blog time every single night for them to just talk about whatever, and they would not talk about whatever in the news spots. Their comments had to be on topic. In nightly discussion, it can be anything. So we created those, and they've been relatively successful by the comment counts. Oftentimes going to over 1,000 each night. Sometimes 2,000. Early days, it was even higher than that. And the morning discussion was created because some of our European friends complained about the nightly discussion being too late for them, and they wanted a place to talk. So the nightly discussion was created for our people across the pond.
Well, that's a great foresight on your guys' part, and it's definitely it sounds like it's definitely useful for people that want to talk about a bunch of random stuff, and so I think that as news networks, I've always heard that news networks need to evolve with the times. And sometimes, we are forced, even on YouTube here and stuff, we are forced to sometimes change our content, with the times and stuff. And
Hmm.
the show is now over. And I don't see the fandom going away, but what's kind of your guys' foresight going forward? Is it just going to be focused on the fandom now, or looking at the future of G5 as news comes in, or what's kind of your guys' foresight here?
Well, first of all, for all the people that are wondering what's going to happen to staff, we're sticking around. We want to see what G5 is like, and of course, there is still more G4 to come that will, continue to, keep those creativity engines going through the supposed season 10 comics and the movie coming out in 2021. So Pony will definitely have some content to draw from. But as for changing of content, I guess the only thing that will really change will be that there will be less news, I guess, because really, if you look at our site on a day-to-day basis, most of the time it is just fandom stuff. The news just kind of trickles in, especially during hiatus season. We get the most news during, well, when the season's airing, because that's when we get the trailers and that's when we get synopses, and that's when we inevitably have to report about the leaks. And that's when we get the most news. But so yeah, I think we will just, for the most part, just stick with fandom created content, stuff like that. Run events, maybe since we'll have more time with this perpetual hiatus that's going on. We might run some more events. I do still plan to do the artist training ground next summer, so there's that to look forward to. Been trying to think about maybe doing reviving an old event called the Friend Offs. That was rather fun. That's for those unfamiliar with it. That is an event where writers can choose any picture that they want and write a short story about it, and artists can pick any story that they want and write a picture from a scene of that story, and then we would share those up on Equestria Daily.
Okay.
Um, but no, yeah, things are going to be pretty much business as usual. I think our biggest worry is just declining viewership over time. That's always been a problem. It's actually been a problem since season two. We've just had declining viewership, just people settling out, or settling out of Pony, or um, where Equestria Daily was the big hub in the very beginning. We then had film fiction break off and make the entire site on fan fiction, and then Derpy Brew, which handled all your art needs. So there were other sites that handled some things that our audience, our audience, they handled some of our things that our audience wanted even better than we did. So they moved on to those places instead of checking Equestria Daily. So viewership has tended to drop since then. Um, I guess we'll just keep on thinking up ideas. I know Seth always has something up his sleeve, so I guess we'll have to see what is in the future, really.
Just like Trixie, right?
Yes, just like Trixie.
So, I know that moving forward, things will always be kind of not the same with the fandom, and you guys, I know, will be around for quite some time. And one of the things I've always been wondering about is, so, how often is it that when you get submissions, say for a podcast or a review or a piece of art, like, do those usually come in by the artists themselves, or or is it like people sharing other people's work? Because I've always wondered about that.
It's a very mixed bag. I would say both. We get comics from comic artists. We get art from the artists themselves, music from the artists themselves. But a lot of people actually just send in stuff, even the popular stuff. Sometimes the artists for those particular things don't send anything into the EQD, but their fans do. Now, it isn't because, at least most of the time, it isn't because the artist doesn't want it posted on EQD. It's just that they might not know about EQD. Um, they don't have the time to compose an email and send it to us, or they forget, that kind of stuff. But their fans don't. So I'd say it's about, I'd say it's maybe not an even mix, but it is both. We do get help from the community. As we constantly say at our panels when we meet everybody, EQD really would not be able to survive the way it has been if it wasn't for the active emailing community that sends things in for us to post, uh, you know, things of interest. Actually, actually, that's actually how I got my start on EQD. I was one of those people that was emailing the site a lot back then, back in early 2011 through the summer and stuff like that. I would gather up plush posts and comics that I found by just diving into DeviantArt and whatnot and sending them in. And apparently, I got so prolific and knew that stuff so well. Seth just hired me on as kind of the comic guy, comic plush customs guy back then, and my role expanded from there.
Yeah, and I've met various plush makers and artists over the years, and or at least over the last year and a half that I've been doing this, and they seem to, a lot of them do send a lot of their content to you guys, and I sure you guys appreciate that, and I'm sure they appreciate it, and we all kind of just appreciate each other, and that's what I've always enjoyed about this fandom, and I hope we continue to do that into the future. And unfortunately, con season is over. So that brings up another one of my questions for you. You guys also do stuff, do coverage of conventions, and how many conventions do you guys go to every year?
Oh, how many do we go to every year?
Yeah.
To be honest, this past BronyCon was my first Brony convention in the past like 2 years. So I haven't actually gone very often, but after going back to BronyCon, I got kind of the itch again. So I'll probably be doing some conventions next year, maybe EFNW or TriCon, um, and or TriCon. I know Seth has only been to some of the very early ones, and maybe 2014, 2015 Babs cons, stuff like that. He is not very much of a con goer. Um, but we have quite a few. But we always seem to have some EQD staff at most of the major cons. If not reporting, holding panels and discussing the site and answering various questions about how to, how to run a similar site, things like that. It's actually a little nice that con season is over because I know all of our artist friends can use a little bit of a break. It's really hectic getting all those prints together and getting everything ready to go to all these conventions. So it's nice that they get a bit of a break.
Oh yeah. And in this, we all need that break in the convention season to save up for the next convention season. And so how do you guys cover the conventions though? Like, do you guys have posts and stuff that you do about each convention, or how do you guys go about that? The news at the conventions.
News at the conventions. Early on, when the conventions were newer, there was more news because the panels and stuff with the voice actors and everything. They were they were exciting because they could give some behind the scenes kind of information that we had never heard before. But as time went on, we started reporting on less panels and doing more individualized interviews. So so for a couple of years we started doing individualized interviews, and then once we got through the people that you know we wanted to talk to, and then the only new real questions we would have would be like, you know, season related, like, oh, what's the next season's gonna bring, that kind of stuff, or whatever we were doing in the current season. And of course, they can't answer because of NDAs and stuff like that. We kind of started skipping out on interviews. Now that the NDAs are lifted and stuff like that, we might be looking at doing interviews one on one with staff that are at conventions again because they can probably speak more freely now. But as for just like reporting on the cons themselves, like, what it's like, what an experience at a con is like, we did some of those early on. But as conventions every year are usually at the same place, so you kind of have the same expectations and stuff like that. So we usually write like one retrospective per convention and give them a plug so that people can see how it's like and what a normal like 3-day experience would be like. And then we don't really cover the convention as a whole and kind of split off into our own specialized areas, whether it be interviews or taking notes down in panels and stuff like that, assuming that there's still something of interest in either of those by the time we get to the con.
Okay. Well, that's something that I've always been personally interested in myself, and I'm sure my viewers will appreciate, that kind of insight, how you guys cover, the different topics and stuff. And unfortunately, we're starting to run out of time. But um, so any like final thoughts on, how you guys do journalism and stuff here in the fandom?
Um, hmm. I would say definitely always try to be friendly, always try to be honest, and do journalism with integrity. If people think that you're just trying to be a clickbait site, or if you're trying to just use rumors without rumors, that if you're just trying to use rumors and passing them off as true, that really damages your credibility because you're not being honest. But just because you have to be honest and full of integrity and kind and stuff like that doesn't mean you can't have fun with it. We have fun on EQD with all sorts of silly posts and talking about things, and it's a great opportunity to share your own excitement about material that's coming up. So if you're considering doing journalism not only in Pony but anywhere else, just kind of keep those things in mind, because if you do, people will trust you, they'll like you, and they'll be happy to help you out, talk, send stuff into your website, things like that. If people just don't like you, they won't help you out, and if it's going to be a community website, that could really hurt you.
Well, that's some very, very sage advice, and something that everyone should take to heart. Is, journalism with integrity is extremely important, and I really appreciate you coming on the show, Cal. And I look forward to seeing what EQD has to offer in the future. And as always, guys, this is Dratta Arcana at Dratta Talks. As always, if you're looking to contact me, you can do so in a variety of ways at Dratta Arcana Gaming on Facebook or dratta.arcana@gmail.com. And as always, I have a Discord now for the community. Link will be in the description. And as always, guys, I'll see you guys on the next video. And as always, this is Dratta Arcana with special guest,
Calpain.
and we'll see you guys later.
Catch you later.